So starting with the quarterbacks, my league plays a 2 QB system. So there's some who are more relevant in ours or people with a 2 QB system than a 1 QB league. But I've tried to stick to the main guys here. Risers, I've got Derek Carr. Even though he didn't have his best week against the Chargers, for me, just looking back at his first month, I always go, I'm pretty conservative when it comes into buying into early season form, especially for someone like Derek Carr, who's sort of done it in the past and burnt us. But he's played the Ravens, the Steelers, the Dolphins, and the Chargers. And if you ranked the defenses 1 to 32 in the preseason, these would probably be in the top 8. So to the fact that he's the QB 11 right now is pretty impressive. His schedule doesn't get much easier. I will say that. They have got a rough schedule this year. However, something I do like is that his throwing percentage isn't outrageous right now. I think his average is in the low 60s. There's room for improvement. A lot of times you see someone ball out as a quarterback and they're throwing at 80%, and you just know that's not sustainable. So that's something we don't have to worry about with Derek Carr. If anything, it might improve. And turnovers is also another thing. That often happens. They might go on a streak of no interceptions, no fumbles, and then all of a sudden that starts to happen a bit more regularly, and we see their scores be a lot lower. Where I think he's had 3 interceptions so far in the year, so we're definitely not seeing a perfect Derek Carr. And I don't think he's really at the level of quarterback where he's going to go, 8 weeks without a pick. So I'm not really suggesting that those are going to stop, but I'm just saying it's sort of a red flag that we don't have to worry about in this situation. Something else that really took my fancy was I always get a bit concerned when Josh Jacobs is in the lineup, because I know John Gruden does love going to him on the big plays, but he only had 1 red zone carry in this. Carr had 1 red zone carry, and he also had 3 red zone attempts. So it wasn't a great game in all for the Raiders, but the fact that they had a 3-1, 3-2, but realistically take away Derek Carr's carry, a 3-1 throwing to rushing ratio in the red zone, always really, really positive. And yeah, Derek Carr he's playing really well as well, just in terms of the eyeball test. So that's something I like to see. Some of his young receivers, Hunter Renfrow didn't have his greatest game. And there's definitely, I think Edwards and Ruggs are going to keep improving. So I definitely like the look of Derek Carr right now. My other one is Daniel Jones. Another guy who I've been pretty conservative with so far this season, but I'm finally going to admit that he's a pretty decent option. I don't think he's that relevant in 1 QB leagues. I'm not sure if these two are really relevant in 1 QB leagues, but I think they're definitely good backups with the buys coming up next week. He's currently the QB 6. But something I really liked about his performance on the weekend was he had 402 yards, passing yards. That's just not something we've come to expect. I know there was overtime, but all in all, without 2 of his best receivers in Slayton and Shepard, against a pretty good Saints defense, that's really, really good. It looks like his combination with Golladay is coming along pretty nicely. We already seen him in his first game for the club throw a deep shot to John Ross. Tony looks like he's coming along nicely. Barkley looks like he's back to his best form. And yeah, things are really looking up for this Giants offense. And what's even better is their defense isn't actually playing that well. So it looks like they're going to be in a lot of high-scoring, close games. And another great thing about Daniel Jones is he's averaging about 50 yards on the ground. So if you can just pocket those 5 points every week, all of a sudden, realistically, if Daniel Jones averages 20 for the year, you're pretty happy with that. So if he gets 50 yards every week rushing, then he's only got to get 15 from the passing game, and he's going to have the odd touchdown on the ground as well. So yeah, definitely like the look of that. And he's also not having many turnovers, which is something that he has seemed to improve in his game, which is good to see. Fallers, I've got Dak Prescott. I think we might have talked about him last week in the podcast, but I don't think he was my number 1 faller, but he is this week. He's had less than 30 attempts in these last 3 games, which is really concerning. It's something, I know Russell Wilson's a really, really good player, and he's good in fantasy as well, but it's why I'm always reluctant to pick Russell Wilson, because I don't like having to, it's the way the Seattle offense is built, that he's going to get a lot of a large yards per completion, but I just don't like relying on 22, 23, 25 complete attempts. I much rather someone who's going to sling the ball 40 times a game. And that's what I thought Dak Prescott was going to be, but that is not the case. Their running game has been absolutely sensational. So they haven't had to throw it. And unfortunately, that is not good news for fantasy owners of Dak Prescott. He has, on the weekend, he had 3 red zone throws compared to 8 red zone carries. And I know the game script suited the run game a lot more, but the way this Dallas team is going and the way the Dallas defense is going as well, it looks like they're going to be ahead of the game a lot. So unfortunately for Dak Prescott owners, I don't think he's going to be that. Well, I actually had him as, I think I had him as the QB1 going into the year, honestly. After what we saw at the start of last season, I thought they were going to be in a lot of shootouts, scoring 40 points. He was going to be throwing 4 touchdowns a game. But the way their defense is playing right now, the way their running game's going, I don't think he's going to be required to be having 40, 50 dropbacks like he was last year. So, worried about Dak Prescott. Also worried about Justin Herbert. His team's 3-1, so you'd suggest the quarterback's going pretty well. But he's only had 1 score above 22, which is not great. And his schedule's pretty hard from here on out. And something that, similar to Dak Prescott, that I don't like about Herbert is their defense is playing really, really high-level stuff. And I think that means they're going to be in less shootouts than last year. I think the Chargers were involved in so many, like 35-33, 38-36 type games last year. And I just don't see that happening that much. I think they're an improved team on both sides of the ball. And I think that is actually a negative thing for fantasy, to be honest. I'm not a massive downer on Herbert. I still think he's a decent, even in a 1 QB league, I think he's still a decent option with upside. But his start to the season's definitely concerned me.
It's a miracle! Oh, yeah! What about that one? Unbelievable! Balotelli, Aguero! Crowd cheers. Here's Siddle.